Now, you mentioned factions. All these factions, especially previously in other editions of Planescape, very much were tied to philosophy. Often, some of those factions were kind of tied to similar forms of philosophy. So I think we've kind of like boiled it down to some like really solid essentials, fundamentals of like those factions. Tell me about the factions and how they function.
Yeah, so factions are essential to Sigil. The larger factions, the kind of currently popular beliefs in the city, we call these the Ascendant Factions. These are the ones that have risen to prominence. They are not dwindling in members. They command a structure, usually in the City of Doors, one of those mega structures that's often their headquarters. And they all center around a fundamental belief about the multiverse, how it works, or some greater principle. Some of these do seem reminiscent of philosophies in the real world. You have, for example, the Bleak Cabal, which kind of represents, it might be similar to nihilism or optimistic nihilism. The belief that, there is no greater truth to the multiverse. There is nothing more. So in those ways, we must commit ourselves to lessening the suffering of others because our outlook is bleak, and therefore, they do things like just helping out people in the different wards, of lessening suffering, of soothing that kind of endless void that they believe awaits them. And then you have kind of other beliefs like the Heralds of Dust, formerly the Dustmen, believe that that life is a false existence, that we're all already dead and there's some greater death awaiting us, and we have to do certain things to get to that next point.
And some of them might be as simple as like the Harmonium, where it's like, no, order needs to be enforced across the planes to keep peace. Or it might be something like the Society of Sensation, a group of people that are trying to explore every expression of sensory experience what exists on the planes. And it might be as basic as like the joy of receiving a birthday present, or as wild as the feeling of having your skin flensed away by the winds of pandemonium. But these factions end up influencing the city by dominating certain wards, certain massive structures there in Sigil, and maintaining civic services across the city. So, for example, the Society of Sensation, which I just mentioned, has its headquarters at the Civic Fest Hall, and they embrace culture and the arts, and they spread that to all of Sigil's people, while other factions have other headquarters that then also maintain other aspects of life throughout the city.
There are many returning factions from the original Planescape. As you mentioned, some might look a little different or might have blended with others. But as with all things in Sigil, while we have these 12 Ascendant factions and another group of a few suggestions of non-Ascendant factions, if there's one that you don't see that was in the old edition, that doesn't mean it's not there. You might choose in your game to bring that one to prominence and replace it with one of the other Ascendant factions. Similarly, you might decide to make your own faction. Maybe one of the characters has a belief that you have these characters in other settings that spread the word of their philosophies to others. Well, in Sigil, there is reality in belief. So they might find that as something becomes more popular, maybe they find a following of their own and there's a new faction in the City of Doors. Now, it probably won't have as many members as, the ones that have their own mega structures, in the thousands probably. But it's enough to start somewhere.